Today's a good day to talk about what is happening in Costa Rica, what is happening in San Jose, and also the story of basically the Afro Caribbean experience in Costa Rica. And if you're seeing all these people, all fancy dressed, pretty women, lovely people, African prints, and you're thinking, ooh, it almost feels like Africa, but it isn't Africa. And this is what we're going to talk about today. It is an absolutely amazing story. So, what's happening is a festival called Festival Flores Dias, and the diaspora, African Diaspora Festival. And the whole story is about how black people actually got to Costa Rica and especially the Caribbean side called Limon. So it is an interesting story, and we're going to talk about all that good stuff and why you're having this party here in San Jose. And apparently, it started a long time ago, before anyone alive today was ever born. And apparently, in the 1500s, when they brought enslaved people from Africa, mostly from Central Africa and Guinea, Ghana, Benin, Sudan, Gambia, all these places. They brought all these enslaved people there. And some of these enslaved people, of course, ended up in the US, others ended up in the other Caribbean islands, Jamaica, Haiti, Colombia, and all these other places. And some ended up in Costa Rica. But at the time, Costa Rica was just a little country with really little population, no really major civilization at the time. You have the indigenous people, but they didn't build pyramids like in Mexico. So anyway, the point here is that it was a small country. And so the manpower that was needed to actually cultivate the plantation wasn't that much. So they just brought only few enslaved Africans there. And they apparently worked in Guanacaste in the north of the country, closer to Nicaragua. And that was fine for a while. But then, like everything else, there wasn't a lot of money to be made. So they just said, okay, never mind, let's move on. And so you had a really small population. And as time went by, things changed. So when central, slavery was abolished in the 1800s, we're talking about 300 years later. So you could imagine over 300 years, we're talking about multiple generations. And you're seeing all these people, directly or indirectly, these are descendants, but not directly of enslaved people, because Costa Rica's Afro Caribbean, Afro Costa Rican, get it right, Afro Costa Rican population is a mixture of everything. And first of all, the first thing basically that happened was that it just wasn't that important. And Costa Rica being a very small country, nothing really was happening at the time. And then they decided in the 19th century, so that was maybe 300 years later, that they were going to build a railroad, and because they needed a port. So you have two major ports in Costa Rica. You have one in Punta Arenas, Caldera Port, and then you have the other one on the Caribbean side, which is the Limon Port. It's the biggest one in the country. Basically, if that port if the Afro-Caribbean, Costa Rican people decide we're going to block that port, we'll all just starve. Everyone in Costa Rica will starve. Apparently about 80% of the goods coming in goes through that port. Of course, you've got the other entrance. You could come in from Panama, but anyway, cargo vessels and all these other things go through the port. So it's quite a big thing. So what happened was that when they decided, we needed to build a port, and so they brought in Asians. Apparently, Asians, I don't know if they're Chinese, but Asians came to work in the 19th century and early 20th century. But the conditions were really bad, and they decided, well, this is it, we're leaving. So they left, and then they went to the Caribbeans, particularly Jamaica, and said, hey, guys, we've got jobs for you. Do you want to work? They said, yeah, why not? Where is it? Well, we're just going to cross the sea, and then you get to Costa Rica. They thought, well, Costa Rica, that sounds nice. Let's go. They went to Costa Rica. It was really, it was terrible conditions, but they stayed and built the railways, and they were there for years. from the 1800s. And then 1900s rolled back in. But during that time, a lot of the people, the first generation probably got older, and the new generation was born in Costa Rica, but they were not allowed to come to San Jose, the center of the country, the Central Valley area. They were just said, okay, you stay in, because of basically racism and segregation, they didn't want them in the middle of the country. They would barred, so you could stay in your region, which is the Limon region, and that is all how far they could go. And but they said, okay, never mind. They did their own thing. Their culture, the music, the sports, the literature, and also they decided, well, we're going to speak Spanish, but we're going to keep our own language, which is most of the Jamaicans, they started to speak their own Creole, which is Jamaican Creole that actually was brought over 100 years ago. And they have kept that till today. If you go to Limon today, it is not unusual for people to actually speak to you in Creole or in English. So they are very versatile, multilingual in the region. And that is partly because they refuse to let them assimilate into the population, the bigger Costa Rican population. And because of that, they did their own thing. It wasn't until there was a civil war in Costa Rica, and after the Civil War they were like, okay, enough of this nonsense, we're just going to change the constitution. And change the constitution they did. So that was in late 1940s. So at that time you could imagine, almost I would say maybe 100 years that the Afro Costa Rican have been in the country. And we're not even talking about those who probably stayed over in Guanacaste, and they've been there for 300 years. But, the population has been assimilated through in marriages and things like that. Anyway, so late 40s rolled over a new constitution. They said, okay, everyone could vote now. Everyone in Limon is now Costa Rican. It doesn't matter, black, white, mestizo, indigenous people. Everyone is Costa Rican. You are equal under the law. You know how it goes. And then they said, free education, free health. Well, not. Let me just. We get universal education. You still have to pay for it. Universal health care and things like that. And they basically started to allow them to free movement all over the country. And that's how it started. And it was during this phase also that Costa Rica also abolished the military. So no military here. And the money that was saved from that, they used people getting down with the African print. Yeah, that is a lot of... it was... Anyway. And you're thinking, what's the link between all this? All right, the link is this, that these people, most of the people dancing here, they are all from the Limon region. So you've got some, more light-skinned people, white, black, mixed, but they really take pride in their culture. That they're from Limon, they've got, they've got flow, they've got vibe, they've got everything. So it is it's celebrating their culture, and what they've done is that most people that Afro Costa Rican, they've never been to Africa, so probably what they know about Africa is reading or watching YouTube videos, and so the outfits and the attires. So they have this, I think, celebration. In Limon. It starts in Limon. It goes from one major city in Limon to the other, and the big one is held in the Limon center. And after that, I think about a week later, they take the whole show to San Jose. Remember San Jose that didn't want them over 60, 70 years ago? They bring the party there, and a lot of people show up, and it's just a lot of fun, and people dancing and just having a good time. So you see African prints, but they don't have a sort of a particular sort of African identity as such. I know people say they are Africans, but they sometimes would they would identify as Afro Costa Rican, because even if they have a sort of, they still, you could tell if you go to Limon, it's a different vibe, but you can still tell they're Costa Rican. It's just a different way to it's the same thing if you go to Blue Fields in Nicaragua. they have a sort of mixed identity of the Afro Caribbean Nicaraguan, but then they're not really they are black, but they're not Africans. They have Afro descendientes, they're called, like people with African ancestry, but culturally they tend to be more or Tico. They have their way, they have things. The food might be different, but you still see the way they think is really, local. And it's just the way things are. They've been here for years. Others have been in other places for hundreds of years. So when they bring the party here, they just like, they sometimes they bring, you can see some flags from different African countries that they either identify with or they like the culture, and it resonates with them. So you see a lot of different people. It's just a good fun mixture of fun. So this is just a snapshot. With the party here is a snapshot of what was actually happening in Limon. If you go to Limon, it's much bigger. It's just loads of people, and it's just the party is just great. So during the events, they highlight issues happening in the diaspora in their region. Okay, the camera person just probably had a few drinks there. Can't keep things straight. All right. Oh, that's much better. Should fire the cameraman. All right. So everyone's dancing, and it's just a lot of fun. And then just up above that, then you go to a lot of rice and beans. Oh, by the way, this is just something interesting about the idea of food in the Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Costa Rican identity. There's rice and beans, which is inspired by a sort of Jamaican influence, which would also have African influence, but there is something called pinto, which is rice and beans as well. But that is, if you call the rice and beans in pinto, the easy way to insult someone in Limon is saying your rice and beans is pinto. Oh, they feel offended. This is not pinto. This is rice and beans. And of course, it isn't, because it's got a different taste. It's cooked in a different way. It's just, anyway, different. All right, back to now the story of how we got here. So once they got access to San Jose, you notice that having the port, you would think that the Limon region would be much more affluent, but the problem is that it isn't. It has a high unemployment rate or underemployment issues, and they've improved the road going from San Jose because of the port and all the trucks carrying goods to the center. But a lot of the investment in Costa Rica, anyway, if you go to Costa Rica, Central Valley, San Jose, the capital, has a huge amount of investment, almost similar to what you see in Paris. Like a lot of investment, and all the other cities, especially smaller ones, don't get enough love. And that is what has been happening. And due to the lack of employment, the history of prejudice, a lot of the people from Limon started to move away from Limon and move to San Jose to, try their luck, like all the people from the north of England. I wonder, once the mines were closed, moved to London or closer to bigger cities to find work. They go to Manchester, Birmingham, the second largest city in UK, or people moving to Paris and the suburbs for work. So you see all that happening. And another thing is that it's just the conflict and the history and the neglect meant that sometimes people are a bit salty about what has been going on. But things have obviously improved, things are getting better. But of course, the reputation of Limon being a dangerous place has been going on. But then it is one of the regions with less access to a lot of resources. And people say, yeah, well, there's poverty, and the reputation. So when people from Limon come to San Jose, they want to show, look, this is who we are. We are Costa Rican, and we are good people. We just need more opportunity and visibility. If you really want to see who we are, come and visit. And that is it.